Aloha and good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, February 13th, 2025, and the time is 9:05 a.m. Will the Committee on Zoning meeting please come to order? I would like to welcome committee members Okimoto and Wire. I understand that Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam and Councilmember Cordero should be here shortly. Although remote oral testimony is being permitted, this is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under HRS Section 92-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue notwithstanding loss of audiovisual communication with remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony and all items on the agenda when each item is taken up in two ways: in person in the council chamber and remotely via video conference or phone. Before testifying, each person shall state their name for the record. Each speaker will be limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. All persons who registered to testify in person will be called upon first. Persons who did not register will be given an opportunity to offer testimony after the registered testifiers. Once in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to the remote testifiers. When I call your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number, please follow the prompts to unmute. As both English and Hawaiian are official languages of the state of Hawaii, pursuant to Article 15, Section 4 of the Hawaii State Constitution and Section 113 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, members of the public may testify in either language. For oral testimonies offered in Olelo, Hawaii, additional time as may be necessary will be allowed for the testifier to provide an English translation of their testimony. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off or silence all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 1 for extension of time only. Members, the first item on our agenda is to approve an extension of time only for Resolution 25-24. Verbal testimony will be limited to comments on the extension of time only, and we will not be discussing the substantive provisions of the resolution at today's meeting. Resolution 25-24 grants a special management area permit to Western Community Crossroads, LC, to allow for the demolition of 3 existing dwellings and the construction of 2 new 2-story single-unit dwellings with attached 2-car garages, replacement of the existing sewer connection with 2 new sewer line connections, repair of the existing fence along the north and south property lines, and installation of new grass block pavers on the existing driveway on an approximately 24,462 square foot shoreline lot zone R5 residential district located at 55-337 Kamehameha Highway in Laie, and identified as tax map key 55002-032. I would like to note that this special management area permit has complicating factors, including differing opinions on the erosion rate for this particular zoning lot, time considerations that affect the required shoreline setback area, and foundation or other adaptation or design measures to mitigate coastal hazards. Last week, the applicant provided further information on the project, and more time is needed to review and consider this information. A reminder for applicants and their agents that are seeking discretionary approvals from the council: you should schedule meetings with the council members of this committee as soon as possible, and for complex projects, preferably immediately after the processing agency, in this case DPP, transmits its report to the council. This will provide council members and their staff, including mine, enough time to review the project, consider any conditions of approval, and avoid the need for extensions of the deadline for council action. I will be recommending a 90-day extension of the deadline for council action on this resolution. Members, for your information, the written request for a 90-day extension of time is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 60-2025. Before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Moving on, is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify in this item? Please come forward to the testifier podium and begin by stating your name. Seeing none, I'm proceeding on with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Moving on to the administration, we have Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director Designate of the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair. We're supportive of this resolution extending the time.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for the Department of Planning and Permitting? Do you have any other questions or discussion before I make my recommendation? Thank you. The chair notes that the time needed to consider Resolution 25-24 may exceed the current deadline for council action. The chair therefore recommends that the resolution be granted a 90-day extension of time pursuant to the request from the applicant's agent in miscellaneous communication 60-2025. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving to agenda item number 2 for action. Bill 58, 2024 CD1. This bill amends the building code of the City and County of Honolulu. Members, we have posted on the agenda a proposed CD2 version of the bill, which I submitted. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. By way of background, last year, Ordinance 24-15 adopted city amendments to the Hawaii State Building Code and the Hawaii State Residential Code, both of which were adopted by the State Building Code Council in 2021, based on state modifications to the Model International Building Code and Model International Residential Code 2018 editions. Bill 58, 2024 was intended as a housekeeping measure to correct miscellaneous errors in Ordinance 24-15. My CD2 version of the bill primarily corrects erroneous references to the International Building Code, because those references would only be needed if the state deleted the provisions in the version of the Hawaii State Building Code that the state adopted. I would like to note that Councilmember Tupola has also proposed a CD2 version of the bill, which would make more substantive changes in Section 12 of the bill relating to what constitutes a substantial change to approved construction documents that would require resubmittal and approval of an amended set of construction documents. Because Bill 58 is a housekeeping bill and is meant to correct miscellaneous errors in Ordinance 24-15, I plan to move forward for discussion with Bill 58 to make, I plan to move forward with Bill 58 to make the technical corrections and to consider any substantive changes, including the amendments proposed by Councilmember Tupola in a separate bill. Before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on this item? Please come forward to the testifier podium and begin by stating your name. Seeing none, proceeding with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
For the administration, we have Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director Designate of the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair. We are supportive of your draft, understanding that this is a housekeeping measure and any kind of substantive changes we would appreciate being addressed in a separate bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for DPP? Do you have any other questions or discussion on this bill before I make my recommendation? Seeing none, the chair recommends that Bill 58, 2024 CD1 be amended to the posted CD2. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD2. The chair then recommends that Bill 58, 2024 CD2 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion, any objection or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving to agenda item number 3 for action, Resolution 25-39. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Hi'ipaka LLC to allow for the construction of phased improvements in Waimea Valley, including the renovation and expansion of the visitor center, demolition of the former seed propagation and equipment storage structure, and construction of a new community resource center, installation of a rockfall mitigation fence adjacent to the new community resource center, and other rockfall mitigation measures as needed, renovation and expansion of the existing Pikake Pavilion, construction of a new traditional Hawaiian hale, upgrades to or replacement of the on-site sewage treatment plant and water system, installation of a new off-site fire hydrant on the Mackay side of Kamehameha Highway across from the Valley entrance, and installation of erosion control measures along stream banks on approximately 1 acre portion of 2 zoning lots totaling approximately 1,799 acres of lone zoned P1 restricted preservation district located at 59-864 Kamehameha Highway and identified as tax map keys 61002, 002, and 005. Members, we have posted on the agenda a proposed CD1 version of the resolution, which I submitted. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Waimea Valley is a cultural and ecological park that occupies the entire ahupua'a of Waimea. For land use purposes, Waimea Valley is under the jurisdiction of the State Department of Land and Natural Resources, Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands. Waimea Valley is privately owned and operated by Hi'ipaka LLC, which is a nonprofit organization that is a part of the State Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The 2 zoning lots on which Waimea Valley is located are not shoreline lots, and although a very small portion of the Waimea Valley zoning lots are projected to be impacted by 3.2 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100, the project site is not anticipated to be impacted. The as-introduced resolution included a condition providing a landowner acknowledgement that the project's 2 zoning lots are susceptible to coastal hazards and may result in harm or loss of life and property. This acknowledgement has been deleted in the CD1 version of the resolution because the project site is not significantly affected by coastal hazards. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service database indicates that endangered, threatened, or protected flora and fauna may be present on the project site. The Fish and Wildlife Service and the project's final environmental assessment recommended several conditions in addition to standard conditions to protect these flora and fauna species. These conditions are included and clarified in the CD1 version of the resolution. An archaeological literature review and field inspection was conducted for the project site in May 2023. The study found that the likelihood of discovering subsurface historical significant findings was low in the fire hydrant and rockfall mitigation areas, moderate near the Visitor Center, Pikaki Pavilion, and the Community Resource Center, and high near the New Hawaiian Hale, which is an area formerly developed by Native Hawaiian with lo'ikalo and dwellings and has otherwise remained undeveloped. Waimea Valley qualifies as a traditional cultural property of great significance to Native Hawaiians. The applicant, State Historic Preservation Division and U.S. Economic Development Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, are preparing and will be executing a comprehensive memorandum of agreement to address impacts to archaeological, historical, and cultural resources that may be present on the project site. The CD1 version of the resolution requires the applicant to implement all mitigative actions and protocols required or recommended by the State Historic Preservation Division in its recommended determination letter and under the memorandum agreement. Joining us in the council chamber is Tessa Monekio Ing and Eric Pashowitz from Monekio Hiraga, the applicant's agent, who will be providing a brief presentation for your information. The presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 77-2025.
Good morning, Council. My name is Eric Pakowitz. I am here on behalf of Munikio Hiraga. We are representing the applicant, Hi'ipaka LLC. Representing Hi'ipaka today is Chad Middleton, their Director of Operations. We are here on the Waimea Valley Economic Resiliency Project. Resolution 25-039. Thank you. As mentioned, Hi'ipaka is a 501c3 nonprofit. They are the organization in charge of the valley, and they steward the land to maintain its environmental and cultural value for future and current generations. They do this by maintaining native plants throughout the valley and in gardens. They preserve cultural sites, and they have conservation efforts, including a native forest restoration project from plants propagated within the valley. The project purpose is to enhance economic resilience, to improve existing infrastructure, to improve safety within the valley, and to upgrade infrastructure. The project is not designed to increase the use or the size of the operation within the valley, meaning they're not anticipating to add more people to the valley as a result of this project. Hiipaka has conducted significant community outreach efforts, including 6 community meetings that they have attended throughout their planning process and the environmental assessment process. Funding sources for the project include a $3.75 million grant from the US EDA, as well as self-funding from Hiipaka. As shown on the map, items 1 is the Visitor Center improvements, which will include the restrooms and the gift shop. Item 2 is the Community Resource Center, which the existing state of the building will not allow for it to be repaired, so it will be demolished and then reconstructed with a metal canopy and then a metal office container. Item 3 is the Pikake Pavilion, which is planned to be expanded. Item 4 is the traditional Hawaiian hale on the Pu'ukua site, TMK 005. And then item number 5 is rockfall mitigation, which will be a rockfall barrier positioned directly behind the Community Resource Center. Item 6 is a water line, which will run from the main area up towards the top of the falls. And then item 7 is a sewage treatment plant, which will eventually replace the existing one with a similar gallon per day capacity. Also notable is that Hiipaka is planning to do erosion control and rockfall mitigation as necessary. And then identified on Kamehameha Highway is the new fire hydrant, which has been proposed as a result of early consultation with the Board of Water Supply. The Visitor Center improvements you can see identified in purple are the new men's and women's restrooms. They will be expanded from the current size. And then also on the right side of the screen, you can see the expanded gift shop. Outside of the gift shop will be a culture walk, which will provide guests a sense of place within the valley and provide some historical context. The Pikake Pavilion expansion is identified on the left with the rendering of the project plans. In the lower left of the screen, the expanded pavilion will allow for a capacity of 357 guests, allowing for the luau that they do on weekdays to condense down from 2 shows per day into 1 show. And it will better allow them to host weddings and other events on the weekends. On the right is a rendering for the traditional Hawaiian hale, located just beyond the visitor center, and that will come with some agroforestry as shown on the bottom right of the screen. Mitigation measures, as mentioned, will include cultural and archaeological measures through an MOA that is being prepared with Hiipaka, the EDA, and SHPD. Environmental mitigations will also be complied with as outlined in the resolution. Traffic mitigations will include the removal of paid beach parking for general use, but will still be available for community events such as swim meets or the Eddy. In closing, we would request that the committee recommend and review the Resolution 25-039 granting an estimate major permit. Thank you.
Thank you for your brief presentation. I wanted to acknowledge Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam, Chair Tommy Waters, and Committee Member Radiant Cordero. Members, are there any questions for the applicant? Councilmember Dwyer.
Thank you, Chair. And not a question, but just a mahalo to both the applicant for all the work that they're doing in the community, and then also just the Chair for the due diligence in the committee draft and all the attention and care for this particular space. It's so important to the community, so mahalo.
Members, any other questions? I have no question, but again, I just would like to, as I stated when we had our meeting, just given what is happening in DC, that you need to be prepared for some of the incoming members, not just at the Economic Development Administration, but in DC. And so you need to be prepared if your grant will be impacted. You know, there is, I don't know who the new regional director is. I know I told you that she moved, but maybe you guys should be in contact with EDA. Have you had any contact with EDA?
To date, we haven't had any negative news from the EDA. We are still in contact with them, and it seems to be business as usual up until this point.
Who's your program officer?
Her name is Brittany McFarland.
Okay, and she will keep you abreast of anything, correct?
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Members, before I call up the administration, I would like to take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify in this item? Please come forward to the testifier podium and begin by stating your name. Seeing none, we are proceeding with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers for this item?
Chair, we have one standing by.
I have a number with the last three digits, 419. Are you here to testify for this item? Last three digits, 419. Okay. Seeing that that person is not responding, I'm going to move on to the administration. Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director Designate of the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Thank you, Chair. We are supportive of the CD1.
Thank you. Members, any questions for DPP? Do you have any other questions on the item? If not, the chair recommends that Resolution 25-39 be amended to the posted CD1. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 25-39 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving to agenda item number 4 for action, Resolution 25-19. This resolution confirms the nomination of Don E. Takeuchi Apuna to serve as the Director of Planning and Permitting of the City and County of Honolulu. And if the nominee would like to make a statement.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, Council Chair, and members. Don Takeuchi Apuna, Director Designate. I'm just humbled and privileged to be considered for reconfirmation. Together, we've been on this journey for since September of 2022, and I think we've accomplished a lot, but there's so much more ahead of us. We all have the same interests and goals at heart, and so I think the next 4 years could be very exciting and very productive. So I appreciate your support, and I am here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank Director-Designate Takeuchi Apuna for her prior 2.5 years of service as the city's Director of Planning and Permitting. You have a very difficult job, leading one of the largest city departments, and I commend you for all of your achievements thus far, including significantly reducing the time it takes to review, process, and issue building permits, both for residential and commercial applicants. I would now like to look at the future to see what your vision for the department is in the coming years. So I will kickstart with the first question. If you could just outline what you believe your greatest accomplishments have been since you've been the DPP director, as well as what your priorities are for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Chair. So I think the accomplishments, looking back in September of 2022, the main issue that we were facing was the backlog and specifically the pre-screen. So we tackled that with improvements in setting standard operating procedures, goals, quotas, and we brought that pre-screen down from over 6 months, just the pre-screen, down to currently, I believe it's less than 2 weeks, maybe even shorter, just a few days for the pre-screen. From there, we moved on to the code review, and we've made substantial progress in those areas with the same people, types of changes as far as management, quotas, goals, and we have reduced the residential code review and the commercial code review for electrical, mechanical, and building. We know that there's still more to do along the whole permitting process, but I believe we've made substantial gains in those areas. We went to electronic plans fully, and we no longer rely on paper plans. We've also upgraded our e-plan system, so now you don't have to worry about looking at status. You can have the customers, the owners, go directly into their permits and see what's going on with their permits. We have gone through major procurements to get the technology that we need, which is the new permitting software through Clarity, where we are set to implement the AI technology for code review. So by the end of this year, if not sooner, you will see those technologies turn on and start to process and be part of the overall process. We have clamped down on monster homes, and I think maybe we haven't heard as many complaints as we used to. People know that we're enforcing, and we will continue to enforce and make sure that people follow the law. We've worked, and I think that coming in 2021, you know, there were the federal indictments and there was a real chill in the department, but with all the things that we're trying to do, my focus is to help the staff. If we give them the right tools, the resources, the guidance, then everything will work. And I think that, things have settled down and people feel that we're building a structure that is supportive for them. And there's less opportunity, much less opportunity for exploitation and problems. So everything is coming together. It'll take some more time, and we appreciate the patience, but we're definitely on our way to making the department what it can be for what's in the best interest of the public. And as far as moving forward, we need to complete all execution of the technologies. We need to educate users, which is a major part of a good implementation of those technologies. We will continue to streamline, including we're looking at having some pre-approved plans for ADUs, so people can look into getting ADUs at a more streamlined approach. We will continue to add capacity and to train up. We're not just trying to get out from under the backlog, but to really be on the cutting edge and provide permitting at the fastest rate possible for our customers. So that's looking forward. And if you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with Vice Chair DeSantis Tam.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions, and so I'll just ask a few, and I'll let my colleagues also ask. So, Director Designate, I will be the first to recognize that some positive things are happening. I think the solar permitting, as you point out, the pre-screen time reduction, both of those have been really bright spots. I really also want to compliment the STR enforcement branch, who's been really great to work with as far as illegal STRs in my district have gone. I also will be the first to recognize that you have a very difficult job. But our job as council members is not just to praise the things that have gone well, but to really dig into some of the challenges that remain. And so I ask these questions lovingly because from our perspective, we're going to need I think some time to dig into these things. I'll also note that with the grace of my colleagues, Bill 20, which seeks to establish DPP as its own special fund, is still alive. It's referred to the Budget Committee. And so with all of that in mind, I really do want to make sure that, that you and your department is stepping up its game because we really need you to do that. I really think that DPP in a lot of ways is a bottleneck. So we'll start with, in the mayor's 2023 State of the City, he talked about splitting up DPP into two separate departments. I understand that that is no longer being considered. Were we as the council ever informed of the analysis, given a report from whoever whoever analyzed these things as to whether or not this is a good idea? Are we here to just trust the administration's judgment in that?
So our consultant at the time, Acuity, they did put some analysis forth. So we'll work with the managing director's office and see if we can provide that to the council.
Thank you. Last year, I want to now turn to your vacancy count. Last year, in the budget committee hearings, you stated that your goal was to fill 8 positions out of the total vacancies between March and July. And then in total in FY25 to fill 25 vacancies. In about 2 weeks' time, you guys are going to be back with a new snapshot. How did you do?
I don't have the specifics. We're always working hard to hire. I know we are hiring, but we also, there's retirements and other movements within the department. So I apologize, I don't have those specific figures. I think we're at least at the same rate of coming in and going out, but that's definitely an area that we're working hard on to improve.
But last year, the goal, or this current fiscal year, which ends in June 30th, the goal is to fill 25. Are we on track at all?
I believe so, but yeah, and understanding what the difference is in total vacancies, I think that we're kind of at the same level, but I can look at where we're at for those specific 25.
Okay. One last question, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. We've heard, and I've been very vocal about these outstanding fines. I mean, we just had a hearing about this whole issue. I also keep harping on the scoff laws that accumulate millions and millions and millions of dollars in fines. When are we going to get just one of these people? When are we going to make an example of just one of these people? And I recognize there's problems, and I keep being told that, oh, we need to work with Corporation Counsel, oh, we need to do this, and we need to do that. It can't be that hard. Can we just get one of them?
Yes, we can. We've discussed this, and I appreciate that. We recognize this as a major part, another kind of backlog that we have within our department due to capacity issues. But I agree, sometimes making an example of some, like the monster homes, it does make it creates a huge effect. So we're working on that. We're working on adding capacity in that area and looking at all the different options we have down the road in order to really ensure that these things aren't acceptable and people need to comply.
Thank you. And again, we certainly, as for myself, as a council member, if there are changes that need to happen in ordinance to the process, I think we absolutely need to. These people cannot keep getting away with repeatedly doing illegal short-term rentals, illegal construction without permits, and then just scoffing at the $1 million fine that just piles up.
Right, exactly. And I think I had mentioned earlier, we are looking to combine all of our enforcement provisions because they're in different chapters throughout, and that will be a great opportunity where we can look at greater enforcement in different ways. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was Director Designate Apuna. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for meeting with my office and myself. I had just a couple of questions. In the past, I think last year when we had the planning committee, you would come before us and you had charts on the rates of how long things are taking, and you were able to show that it had been cut down. What is it looking like right now for your time from start to finish for permits? For the most part, I know we have different types of permits. And what are you doing? And I know committee chair had already asked what you're planning on doing moving forward, but I wanted to know what it looks like right now. And then I had another follow-up question after that.
I would say that the current permitting times are about the same as we had reported at the last status. So for the residential code review, just the residential code, it's a 2-week turnaround to get your plans back after comments just for the residential code review. For the commercial, the electrical, mechanical, and building, I believe it's less than 2 months for that, just for the code review. So we are, certain things happen and it goes up and down. We have only 2 electrical examiners right now, so we need to add to that, but just 2 for all of the commercial projects coming in is not ideal. It's far from ideal. So things kind of bump up there, or for a while we had stormwater quality. We had a backlog, but that's come down as well. So we will continue to work on the code review, bringing those down, but also all the other agencies and reviews that are involved. I would say we're kind of steady, but there's so much more improvement that we're working on to bring those times down. We've actually set internal goals for our code review for, within weeks and days for each part, and that's a big part of this year's just objective in the permitting. So and that would require adding more capacity and some other elements, but that is what people are charged to do, and we hope by the end of the year that you will see that come down even more.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned adding more capacity. That was kind of leading, maybe I can have you clarify that, but also with all of the changes being made, both at the state level and here with us approving, affordable housing projects, how are you going to address these influx or the future of having more projects that you're going to have to review? With, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam asked about the staffing. So when you mentioned adding more capacity, are you talking about human beings, bodies in the department, as well as the electronic technology advancements that you guys have been using, or how are you going to address that?
Yes, that's absolutely right. So when the technology starts to work on, if we have the AI reviewing, that's going to help, and then the software is going to have much more automation to help speed it up. But we are adding bodies too. We're looking at using salary savings immediately to get more building plans examiners on board. So I think that will help with any kind of influx of more affordable housing projects or housing in general. So just like the ADU pre-approvals, we hope that that system will help take it out of the main system and just allow people to move forward with the pre-approved plans.
And that leads to my final question. You mentioned the ADUs that were approved last year in the state legislature and things that we decide here. I think the concern when I hear from residents is the layers of bureaucracy, or just why is it so hard to get things done? Yeah. So what can we do on our end to eliminate or minimize some of the layers that people have to go through to get through your department?
So, and I think that's part of what we're also doing is we're looking at what, some of the regulations that have built up over time, what is really necessary or what was just a Band-Aid at the time. We've done that, in the past couple of years, but we're taking a look, staff's taking a look at what they think might be able, that we could take out, and so we can present that to council, and that would be very helpful. Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair Kia Aina. Hi, Director Takuji Apuna. Thank you very much for the great work that you've done. It's a real stretch for me to compliment people, but I really want to take time to compliment you and the work that you've been doing and the follow-ups. I look forward to the future as well. I do want to ask a question about, touching on Councilmember Dos Santos Tam's touching on the consolidation of the department's roles and splitting DPP up, and then you mentioned the acuity study. I was wondering, what are your priorities to consolidate the roles and responsibilities to make it easier for you and your team to execute the huge tasks that you have?
So I think everything is about the people, and a lot of it currently is just the capacity. The ability to go quickly and hire people is important. And so I know Nola and her team are working hard, and they're very supportive of what we're doing and what we need. So just being able to build more capacity so we have enough people not just to stay above water, but to really perform at a rate that people can just come in and know, I'll get this in a week or less, I'll get this in a day. So I think it's the people. We got the technology, that stuff is going, but and we're working on processes with the council and internally, but it's about getting enough people, paying them the right amount of money to make it attractive and to retain them, and giving them training and other tools that will help them to do their job.
Okay, understood. So positions and funding. However, there's also the aspect that the roles and requests to the department have grown exponentially in the past decade, especially in the past 7 years or 5 years. And so with that, we have people who have been taking on more and more roles, but are there any internal policies that and rules that you're looking at to divide those things between your team?
That's a good question. We have been meeting with Office of Housing and DLM, right? They might take some of the tasks that we have related to affordable housing, and it makes sense to me, especially to help them move forward quickly on what they're doing. So that would probably take from DPP and let us focus on what we normally do. But other than that, I think it's just like the number of people to help us go forward, nothing really to reorganize internally. Although we are going through reorgs too. Things should be placed in certain areas. So that's part of what we're doing with DHR right now.
Okay, because there's also the plans that come before our committees and the council that you provide updates on, that we have to also ensure that we're implementing within the 10 or 15 years that they are set to be implemented in. And that's a lot of rules and changes to just to be tasked with. So I do hope that there is support if you do decide to have to rejigger things. That would be really great. And I'm sure the council would be willing to support that, because we hear about those issues the most too. My second and my last question for this round is regarding public hearings that DPP is tasked to do. We know that that is part of the process set by ordinance, as well as depending on what it is, the HRS as well. And so I was wondering, I know it is cumbersome to do the public hearings, whether it be at the Mission Memorial Auditorium or whether it be like at Palama Settlement. There was a public hearing at 1 o'clock on a Friday that I don't think anyone knew about in my district. But part of the public trust for these projects moving forward, besides here at the council and this committee, is also what comes after, right? And so I think, do you have any ideas of how to assist the public hearing process so that not just the public, the neighbors and businesses know about it, but also us and even your own team know about it as well?
Yeah, and I see there's been some kind of there's some missed communication, so we can do better about that. I would like to, we have it on our website, but some kind of repository so that everyone, and we can have some group email alerts about the different public hearings that are coming up, and maybe some type of being able to, after the hearing, provide information or other that would kind of round it out. So we can look at that and see what better we can do as far as communicating those events. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for the team that you're building, and thank you very much for the updates that you provided in Chair Kia Aina's committees, because I love to share that with my neighborhood board members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wire.
Mahalo, Chair. And echo all the sentiments we've heard today. I mean, I think I initially typically probably would have been asking about permitting, but you've been keeping us so up to date on all the improvements we've been seeing. And just mahalo you and your entire team. I think everyone's heard the praises from the community, and so just so grateful, given the challenges we've gone through, to just see that faith and trust and respect for DPP and as a result the broader city work. And so just thank you for that and all the effort that you and the team put into meeting the needs of the community at all levels. I was going to ask, because I might have missed it. So, because I know when we our mayor rolled out the pay incentives or differentials for engineers last year, I think it said they did a study on the other plan reviewers and staff. And so were there plans, or have there been plans approved to utilize similar differentials for the rest of the DPP staff, or that was still in the works?
Yes, so that's definitely, we're working on that. So for our building plans examiners, we are working with HR to kind of reclassify what they do. We believe that they do a lot more than maybe what was currently described when we revisited and when we looked at what they're, back in 2018, I think, because we believe that they should be paid more, that what they're doing is very advanced and complex, even compared to the other county plans examiners. So we're working with HR, and that is our goal, to raise their salaries. With the inspectors, there was the construction inspectors, got a shortage differential, but we have more than construction. We have zoning, building, electrical, mechanical inspectors as well. So we're trying to make sure that they are similarly paid to the construction inspectors, and that might be a reclassification or other, but we're working with HR on that. And then our planners, we have I think a total of 38% vacancy rate, and general plans, development plans, all that were on such a limited capacity, but the state recently approved a shortage and we need to match that. We're already behind because the state is picking up people ahead of us. So we're working with HR on that, but definitely we got to bring all of this up. It just takes a lot of steps to get there.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, so are we expecting all those changes in the budget, or we'll see them reflected in, or contemplated, I guess, 'cause it's coming from the same source, but in the budget in March, that's going to be kind of the...
I think there's some of that in there, and then we're trying to see through salary savings how we can address what is in the budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
but all of those individual positions or groups would be included and contemplated?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, good. No, that makes me really hopeful. I know that there's been ironing out of all the details with the urban infill projects, and I know the city has the post-construction grant program stood up, and then there's going to be a course continued conversation about the pre-construction grant program. So are there actually rules implemented for the post-construction grant program?
No, there's no rules or administrative rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many staff are associated with that particular program?
In DPP, it's basically one. So for the post-construction grant, they review the building permit to make sure that it complies with for the floor area in order to receive whatever the grant is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that position or that planner or reviewer have other responsibilities, I'm assuming,
Yes.
because of the scope of the work DPP does? So would you need, or would it be feasible to use the team you have now, or would you need an additional position once the pre-construction grant program is stood up?
So for the pre-construction grant, as far as its current draft, or one of the drafts I've seen recently, it's different than the post-construction. I think there's some prevailing wages and other requirements, and other establishing the project's financial suitability. And we do not have staff that are currently equipped to do those things. So we may need rules, but we would need the capacity or the expertise to do that part of it. So it is different than the post-construction grant process.
Okay, so you need someone to do the labor standards evaluation and all of that.
Right, yeah, because I think they have to provide it, I don't know if it's yearly or monthly, but the roles on that.
Okay.
And I understand DDC, they have something similar, and so they have someone working on verifying and doing that.
Community services I think does too. In terms of going in, I mean, is it what I'm thinking? They're going in, they're checking the payments, they're making sure the correct journeyman versus all the different positions are there, and then flagging it and making sure it's corrected. Is that kind of the role?
I think so. I don't know too much of the details, but yeah.
Okay, so I mean would that position be included in the positions that are being evaluated for pay differential or incentives? I'll give you a planner, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a planner with some, type of financial background.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just asking because as we're, and I'll wrap this up, Chair, but so I guess where we're at, because I appreciate the input, but I think part of the discussion we've been having with Housing Office, and I know they've talked to DPP and BFS, is just ensuring that the program, as it comes out codified in the ROH, is sufficient to stand up the program. Because I think that would save a lot of time and staff capacity if we can avoid having to create an entire rules framework. It sounds like you're saying you're not sure yet if that's possible because there's additional requirements that would be needed, or do you think there could be specificity in the?
I think, maybe there could be more specificity in the ordinance itself. I think it more is just a capacity issue for us to process.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And then last question, I was just gonna flag, because I know there's a lot of bills pending across the street, and just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe flag ones that you think are of most concern or that we should tune in to more specifically, because I know also not everything's gonna move at the same pace as well.
Right.
If not, that's okay, but I welcome your input on that, so we're all kind of aware.
Right. I mean, unlike last session, I don't see any kind of red flags right now, and we're monitoring, and we've seen some that were, but then they kind of died, or so we're okay right now, I think, but we'll let you guys know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mahalo. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Chair Waters. Oh, okay, let me ask a couple of questions first, and then we're going to have a second round, and then we're going to end the dialogue, if you don't mind. Yes, okay. So, Director, as you know, the city now has the authority to phase out short-term renters, and you and I have talked about it, but I just needed it out so we can have a dialogue on this. What are your thoughts or plans on how the city might implement a phase-out of non-conforming short-term rental uses?
Yeah, I think that's a big policy question that I know we've been discussing, that we will be prepared to do that. I think it's just figuring out, it's understanding what the current number and where they are and how we would tackle that, but it probably would require the council's input.
Sure, and you and I discussed that under the state law, it actually required that you have to have a plan, and so the thought would potentially be to introduce a resolution directing you to a certain time frame to complete that plan of transitioning. For myself, in the interim, now that we have this law, I thought that we at least should be exploring how to prohibit the sale when someone is selling a non-conforming use property from selling that use. In other words, it would phase out. Would you be supportive of such a proposal?
Yes, I think we could look at that. I think that's one way to do it. So we would definitely look at that and see how we can execute.
Okay, my second question has to do with the land use ordinance. Thank you so much for working with the Planning Committee on Bill 64, 2023, which although I'm pleased that it's done, it was a very painful process because it was so extensive and it covered so much. And I do know that you are looking at other articles. Can you give me a status report on what your next plan of action is with regard to the land use ordinance? What phase is next? What are you looking at?
So I think that we have a consultant. Yeah, that's providing feedback. So Article 2, which are the development. Yeah, Article 2 of the LUO would probably be next that we would present to the council.
And what is that?
That is the, oh yeah, it's the permit procedures.
Permit procedures.
Yeah.
Oh, our favorite topic. Okay. And lastly, I brought to your attention, but I just wanted to have a public dialogue because I believe other communities are impacted. As I mentioned, there is a street in Kaneohe called Cobb Adams Road. And when an issue was brought to my attention, it was only brought to my attention with regard to one particular parcel, which is at 451117 Cobb Adams Road D, which is being considered for for the Hinamauka, for a project. And unbeknownst to me, I guess right next door there's units A, B, and C, and I was not aware of that. So when I updated the community that a conditional use permit had not been submitted yet, I was unaware that all of these units are next to each other. So my question, maybe just for educational purposes, can you describe what the difference is between the definition of family versus a group living facility?
So I think family is 5 persons, and then the group living facility, I understand it's not necessarily based on the number of occupants, and that there is some interplay with what the state requires for the adult residential care home.
Okay, and so with regard to DPP's role, it would likely be when it would be considered a group living facility, and then a conditional use permit comes to us.
Correct.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to let you know, after delving into the complexity of all of these units, I think the community is concerned that you can't look at a unit freestanding because it's right next to another facility. And I'm pretty sure that this is happening all over Oahu. So the only reason I'm mentioning this is, number one, I need a little more attention to be able to answer the community's concerns on what exactly is going on in Cobb Adams Road. And number two, if it's a little more complex than that, I might have to be looking for a town hall meeting.
Okay.
So I would, one of the other, but right now it's not sustainable for me because I am ill-prepared to be able to answer these questions, and it's going to be agendized at likely the next Kaneohe Neighborhood Board meeting. But
Okay.
thank you so much. I just wanted to flag it for you. Vice Chair Dos Santos Town.
Thank you, Chair. I want to build upon Councilmember Wyer's question about rules and the rulemaking process. But before I do that, I want to make another point. So last month, January 21st, I sent Council Communication 14, which was a follow-up to a letter that I sent to your department on October 31st, and a follow-up again on December 12th. And so it took 4 months to get a response from DPP about a fairly simple question, which was about the rulemaking process. And this is not a one-time thing. There have been a number of letters that I've sent to DPP where I've had to send follow-ups, and I recognize that you're behind, but we are a co-equal branch of government, and we are here to get answers and help you in that regard. So I want to make it abundantly clear that I think that not getting a response in a timely way is unacceptable, and I hope you understand and appreciate that.
Yes, agreed.
So I wanted to dig into this business about rulemaking because the subject of the letter was Bill 6, which we passed in November of 2023. And it was a bill that came from the administration, came from DPP itself by request to us to do self-certification. And we passed the bill. It had very little amendments. And I understand that the rules were finally adopted 14 months after the bill was passed. It took 14 months for DPP to set up rules for its own process. This doesn't give me very much confidence about future policy changes that we might make and we might direct. Councilmember Wyer brought up in Bill 31 about prevailing wage compliance. How can we feel assured that if we make policy changes, that DPP is going to be ready and able to implement them because we face so many challenges island-wide?
So I think that we need to prioritize some of these things. We have a lot, each of our staff or our division chiefs have going on, so I think we need to better prioritize what needs to get out the door quicker. The rules making process, it's usually, I would say, if you're really on it, 6 months or so, so I understand. I think with the self-certification rules, there was some back and forth that the industry wanted to share even before and after we had looked at the rules and gone through that process. So, but I understand what you're saying. Like when we are tasked with establishing the program or providing rules on that we need to go, it's a capacity issue. And I keep saying that, but it's true. We have division chiefs running and making sure all the commercial permits are going through, but also everything in between, like creating the rules and that. But I think we just need to learn to prioritize and make sure set schedules and make sure we're hitting those schedules.
And this relates to another, thing that we as the council, I guess previous councils, have passed. There's a number of requirements in ordinance passed by us, approved, signed off, for approvals in a certain amount of time. For Bill 7 projects, 90 days. And if it's not approved, somebody can march down to the Fosse building on day 91 and get their permit in hand and proceed. That, of course, is not the case. And it's the same thing for clean energy projects. It's the same thing for ADUs. There's a number of these statutory deadlines, and I don't think there's a single one where somebody can march down on day 91, or in the case of some of these clean energy projects on day 29, and get their permit. And so, but we, as the lawmaking body, has said on day 91, it shall be approved. And I understand it's a capacity issue. I know that there's issues getting other things down the line, but that's what the law says, and it's your job to implement the law. So how are we going to fix that?
So I think we have done that, and it's not necessarily an approval. It's that they're going to self-certify, and and in many cases, if not all, where they want to, they don't want to self-certify. And the
law says it's approved. The law says they can march down to Fosse Building on day 91.
Yeah, I don't think it says approved, but
it's deemed approved.
Yeah, it's hard for us to deem it approved if it hasn't been reviewed by us.
That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Well, I mean, it does matter because if they're going to move forward without the full review, then they're taking on some of that liability with their stamp, or they're saying that they're going to self-certify the project.
I think you might be missing the point that we say that this is a priority. We've said it is a priority that these projects, Bill 7 projects, clean energy project, ADU projects, get out the door in a certain amount of time. And so to say, well, they have the ability to go and self-certify, and they take on an amount of risk. No, we said that on day 91, it shall be deemed approved. So what are we going to do next budget cycle when you come back before us in March of 2026 to say, every single one of these where the ordinance says it shall be deemed approved, in 90 days, they have been deemed approved?
So that's what we've been working on as far as adding capacity, fixing the technology, fixing the processes. If you want it within that time range or shorter, then we need the people. We need to be able to process it. That's the bottom line. I mean, you can say all kinds of deadlines and that it needs to be done at this point, but if we don't have the capacity to do it, it's not going to happen. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about. I can't have the same amount of staff do 10 times more than they already do. I need 10 times more staff to do that. So, and we need to fix the software that is slowing us down or is not making things move faster. And I need AI to make sure that we can review faster. I get it. We want the same things, but it takes time to get there and to build all this to make it work. So I understand your point. We're working on all those things. I think we've even worked through with the solar guys to make sure that we're doing that. I think we worked that out. It's a lot of different changes and adding what we need to get there. But I appreciate the point that you're making.
Thank you. Last set of questions for me. It relates, I think, to how DPP and the council work together or sometimes don't. And this is about two things: adaptive reuse. It took us 3 bills to get to the adaptive reuse bill that we just passed. And along the way, it took the state legislature to pass a law on the state side to tell us what to do. There are right now several bills in the state legislature to tell us even more of what we need to do. And that's about zoning and 201H approvals and a number of other things. The legislature wouldn't be doing these things if we could get them done in a timely way ourselves. And so when we went through this process, I was still unclear all the way to the very end about exactly what the administration's position was and the department's position was with regard to things like adaptive reuse, or when the Office of Housing went through its rule changes as it pertained to the 80% AMI rates and the HUD rates. It got to the point where I had a bill prepared to just say it in ordinance. It's frustrating to me that when we as a council try to set a policy and try to get the city moving in a certain direction, I often feel like the department is unable to give us a clear answer and a clear direction. And so I want an assurance that under your leadership in the next 4 years, we are going to be pro-housing. We are going to be looking very clearly at ways to actually implement things and to get them moving. And so I just want to hear that you're committed to doing that.
Yes, we are committed.
Okay, thank you.
And sometimes I just like to add, you know, the state, they want to impose certain things, but sometimes the state doesn't know what we do. And we've all experienced that. So I think it's important that we stand strong and say this is our process and this is why we do certain things. So it's not always that the state knows better. I think, sorry.
Councilmember Cordero. Oh. Chair Waters.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what you just said, there was a bill at the legislature, I think introduced that on the Senate side, that would basically divest council overview of 201H projects. Do you have an opinion about that? And or were you able to testify one way or the other with regard to council oversight over 201H projects?
I'm not sure if we submitted testimony on that. We did, we understand. I mean, we're a big part of that process. And we know it's important to you and your constituency. So I think we didn't think that was a good idea, and we put that in writing.
Fantastic. I mean, one of the things that gives the community an opportunity in a public forum to testify one way or the other. And I think this committee has been very good about timeliness in getting these 201H projects out. You know, a follow-up on one of the questions that Councilmember Wired and Councilmember Dos Santos Tam talked about was rewriting job descriptions. Yesterday, Director Miyazaki talked about the onus really is on the departments to rewrite the job descriptions. I know you said that you're working with them, but do you agree that the onus is on your department to rewrite these job descriptions?
We understand what we do, so we should put that forth. Sometimes there might be a disconnect about, or the communication doesn't translate because HR, they don't do permitting, they don't do this, that, and the other. I just think that both need to work together better so that there's understanding. And maybe some flexibility to, or just deferral to the agency that actually does the work. Like, understand this is what we do, or we have no reason to not be truthful. This is exactly what we do.
Appreciate that very much. And then just lastly, you know, I personally want to thank you for your personal involvement in looking at these monster homes in my district. You know, I know you personally looked at these plans and really appreciate that. So we still are fighting these monster homes in our community and appreciate your further help there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And I wasn't going to ask any questions, but I just wanted to acknowledge, I think that that's a really good idea, if I understood correctly, was in terms of planning for phasing out, maybe starting with when a property is sold, So I would fully support that. Even looking at maintaining the licensing, because I know there's a lot of non-compliant folks. And so I think those may be two fair places to start, because one, I mean, you'd start to phase out some, but then also create a better inventory of and knowledge base of who's actually operating, where they are, they're staying compliant, we're generating the revenue, we're ensuring that we're getting the increased property tax that we have on them. And then can revisit the 90, 30-day conversation that we've been having once we have a better hold. Because I understand why folks didn't want to pull back the 90-day because they saw it abused. So I think if we can get a better hold of enforcement, then we can have a candid discussion and weigh it. Because I think both sides make sense, but just from a tenant side, like I have to acknowledge, you know, like we've had, you know, a pipe break and the whole ceiling had to be redone. And I think it'd be absurd to make a family have to rent for 90 days in that situation, you know? Because the hotel's so expensive and you have domestic violence victims, you have tons of people that can't necessarily access long-term, more expensive leases. So I think it's a fair conversation to have. Because I know the 90, 30-day came from DPP, I think, before, but I think tackling, getting a better handle, and then doing incremental adjustments is appropriate. So I just came from the idea you mentioned, so appreciate that, and thanks for sharing, Chair.
Thank you. Members, if there are no further questions, I'm going to go to take public testimony. Proceeding first with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on this item? Please come forward to the testifier podium and begin by stating your name. Seeing none, proceeding on with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Members, do you have any other questions or discussion before I make my recommendation? Seeing none, the chair recommends that Resolution 25-19 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Mahalo everyone for being here today. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.